Mike's Daily Podcast.
Thank you, my cousin Ann Katrine and my late great Uncle Joop. It is Café Anyway where we are, and my name is Mike Matthews. Welcome to Mike's Daily Podcast, episode 1618. And today, I am going to talk to you at a very early hour. It's 5:44. Ooh, I'm running a little bit late today. But we've got some things,
Mike's Daily Podcast,
to say to entertain you. Remember, I was talking about a guy yesterday named Robert? Well,
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Apparently, I missed a call from him. He must have been calling to find out about the girl that I've been dating. And then there's something I was going to do that's really grating. That's kind of grating, isn't it? And it hurts my throat, too. Sorry. But, wow, I've lost how the song should go at this point, so
Mike's Daily Podcast
is the name of the show. And welcome back to this episode. I have some friends
Mike's
that I
Daily
introduced to my
Podcast
lovely lady friend.
Yeah!
My LL. And is she an LLC? That's a financial reference. She, let's see, a lovely lady, certified. That's what she is. No, but my friends Nick and Steph got to meet her, and we were at this place called Fairmont Ridge with my wonderful dog Basil the Boxer, who, by the way, is just smitten, to coin a word that I used in a previous show. Look who walked in.
Awesome.
He is so smitten with this lovely lady that he's always wondering where is she? Like, if she's... We were at this store. Well, she was inside the store, and I was walking Basil around, and he kept looking back at the store. Is she there? Is she coming out? Did that door just open and she came out? No. In fact, some characters walked in to Café Anyway. Hello, my master. It's Madame Rootabega. I am magical.
Oh. And this is Valentino, the parking attendant.
And this is Bison Bentley. Do you know that?
What is the matter with you? There's nothing wrong with us here.
Yeah, nothing wrong with this. Do you know that? You guys, when you were in New York, I assume you were in New York, I just don't know why, that Rudy Giuliani, what'd you think of him?
And here's today's podcast picture.
Yeah, he was great.
We love him. Do you know that? Well, Donald Trump's new lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says the president repaid attorney Michael Cohen for the $130,000 payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. Did you know that?
You are fake news. Fake news. Fake news.
Well, that's according to the Associated Press. Trump had told reporters that he was not aware of the payment and that he didn't know where Cohen had gotten the money. Giuliani made the revelation during an appearance on a Fox News show that is called Hannity. The guy I knew back in Santa Barbara at UCSB. We were on KCSB AM back in the day, like 80s, 88 is when that was. Because I remember coming in, I've talked about this story, but I remember there was a guy that was on before me named Jake the Snake. And I walked in, and he was playing a new song by The Church. Do you know The Church? Sometimes when this place gets kind of empty, messing with the light, I think of her, down in temptation, under the Milky Way tonight. They were from Australia. The Church. Wish I knew what you were reaching for. Might have known what I would find. And it is something kind of special. Great song. It's been covered many times. And anytime anyone does a cover of it, it's amazing because it's such an interesting song. But The Church had a song called Reptile, which I cannot think and remember how it goes. But I remember Jake the Snake was fittingly playing a song called Reptile as I walked into the AM studio, and he was, I don't know, I think he was a bit of a partier, but I did my show called The Public Mic, where I would go out with a tape recorder, record people on the street, then bring it back to the station, play back the interviews, and then play the song that they wanted. We all had, I think, an hour to do our show. And it was on a Sunday afternoon, as I recall. And I have to take a swig of a Matthews smoothie. Yes, we're serving Matthews smoothies now here at Café Anyway. Let's take a look at what's in the Matthews smoothie. Well, my gosh, there is... we've got chunks of strawberry, mango, peach, pineapple. We got spinach in there. A little bit of flaxseed to aid in digestion. And there's a banana. So there you go. It is built for a king or queen. Not to be gender specific. Anyway, what happened was I would do my show, and then coming on after me would be Sean Hannity. A young Sean Hannity. Younger Sean Hannity. A thin Sean Hannity. He's a little bit more filled out these days. So he would come in, hey, Mike, nice to see you. And I think this happened 2 or 3 times. And then I saw him at the station once. And I know other people at KCSB saw him and talked to him. He was very friendly and chummy when he would talk to a lot of people there. So if anyone wanted to do research into that for any particular reason, I'm sure they could find to just look up the roster of DJs that were on KCSB back in the day. And I'm sure because what's fascinating about that is the only time Sean Hannity was ever on a liberal-leaning station. He has always been conservative. He has always been very, steeped in hatred towards the left. And so to be on a liberal station is just hilarious. And that's the time that he was, that 1 year. So that's what I find fascinating about that story and why I bring it up. Not to say I knew someone. Sean Hannity doesn't know me from a bucket of rocks, but he has gone on to greatness. And I am hosting my podcast, Mike's Daily Podcast, the best podcast ever.
Busted eardrums.
And it's okay. So what happens is, Giuliani. Oh, and Michael. There is a Michael Cohen, Sean Hannity connection because Michael Cohen in the records when they went through all that at the courthouse, it comes out that Sean Hannity is a client of Michael Cohen. But Giuliani made the revelation on Hannity's show, and he also says the payment is going to turn out to be perfectly legal. He said that because that money was not campaign money. Stormy Daniels claims that she had a relationship intimate with Trump in 2006, months after his third wife gave birth to his youngest child. She was paid $130,000 by Cohen before the 2016 election to keep quiet about the allegations. Trump has denied having relations with Daniels. And that's the story of that. Well, Nick and Steph, let's go back to them. We were at Fairmont Ridge, and I've walked with Nick and Steph and their 2 dogs, Dixie and Bella, before, and taken Basil the boxer there. So I am Nick and Steph and I agreed to meet at Fairmont Ridge. Now I'm with my LLC, and we are walking over to see them. And I see them at a distance, and I see Steph see me, and she suddenly leans over to Nick and kind of like points at me like, oh my God, there she is. So not that would make my LLC feel very uncomfortable or anything, but that was kind of cute. Nick likes to give me grief for mentioning Fairmont Ridge on my podcast because he says that too many people are discovering Fairmont Ridge now. We used to go there and no one would be there. Now you show up and there's 80 million people. But that's how the Bay Area goes. China, I heard, is cracking down on jaywalking. Do you jaywalk? There are too many jaywalkers in the Bay Area, that's for sure. If people just cross, they don't care. And everyone's slamming on their brakes, it's not safe. I think, from what I saw from the footage of the person who was killed in Arizona by a self-driving car, I think they were jaywalking. But it is you should be careful. But it is a thing that you can get hit with a stream of water. This is in Daley in China's Hubei province. They can get sprayed with water. That's right, if you are a jaywalker. And I heard, too, that you can get publicly humiliated. And there are other ways they're trying to fight it, too. Okay. And I've been listening to this wonderful podcast about the 1968 Democratic Convention, which was a mess, to quote our president, who said this.
A mess.
Thank you.
It's a mess.
Well, it was because of the Vietnam War, and the head Democrat would be Lyndon Johnson, the president, and he still had a strong Vietnam War policy, and the Democrat had a huge freedom contingent that was no, let's end the war, let's get out of the war, and all of this came to a head at the convention in 1968.
What was to come happened.
Well, there was
Chicago.
the yippies.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't think that Humphrey could be stopped.
That's Paul Rubin, the host. Ken Rudin, the show. Paul Rubin would be Pee Wee Herman. Ken Rudin is the host of the show. And what's fascinating about all this is how Chicago was so messed up. Their police were so they were murderous. They went out there and they just had this vitriol towards hippies. Anyone who looked like a hippie. And they just, all that came to a head. The police, especially the head of military background, and, were supporting the troops in Vietnam, and then the hippies, and peace and love, and it just, it all happened 50 years ago, half a century ago. So Ken Rudin talked about that a little bit.
Approach, never trying to sort of stir the troops so much as to help the country understand what the war was about and why it was wrong.
That was one of the supporters. He was a teenager back then. He was actually at the Chicago demonstrations. And it basically went like Richard Daley, the mayor, he had his the police go and start hitting the demonstrators. Mayor Daley, Chicago's Mayor Daley, had his police come into the people, the crowds, clubbing the people on the outer rims, the demonstrators. And so the people on the inside, the thousands on the inside of these demonstrations were being crushed. And then I didn't even know about this, and I didn't hear it till listening to this podcast, that they had these massive trucks with barbed wire on them. Now that's just crazy. And they were driving towards, people were getting cut up with that.
On the edges of the demonstration. And there was something that were dubbed Daley dozers, which were Jeeps with barbed wire frames on the front of them, about 6 feet high and 8 or 10 feet wide. And these Jeeps started driving into the crowd with this barbed wire, pushing people back. And, of course, there was no place that people could be pushed to because we were already cheek by jowl in the street. You couldn't compact the crowd or push it. Where were they going to push it to? There was no place to go. So suddenly the police were coming. They were beating people on the edges of the crowd. People in the middle of the crowd were being crushed. People falling through windows or being pushed through plate glass windows along
on the street. Yeah, because nowhere to go. So they're getting pushed through the windows of the store. It's just crazy. So that was 50 years ago. And I was also listening to a podcast about something happening also in New York, and that would be that there are taxi drivers now that are killing themselves, that are committing suicide because of the situation with the medallion system. They have this medallion system. In order to drive a taxi, you have to pay close to $1 million to have, or you used to have to pay up to $1 million, sometimes more, for these medallion, these certified that would allow you to drive a taxi in New York City, and a lot of taxi drivers would hold on to those medallions and then sell those and use that as a form of retirement. And now those are worth nothing because of Uber and Lyft. And
from the New York
and everybody
when I have to pay $160,000 for medallion or $270 for license.
So you're saying the competition is not the right word?
So yeah, Uber drivers only have to pay $270 for their license, whereas the taxi drivers had to pay over $100,000. So that's and what happened is this one guy dumped his whole life savings into having a medallion. Now the medallion's worth nothing, and and this has happened several times, and that's what they feel has created, the despair that has led to suicide amongst taxi drivers in New York. That I found very fascinating as well. And one other thing I wanted to talk about was Questlove. Questlove is he's the drummer guy that you see on the Jimmy Fallon show. He's produced all these albums. He's also a professor, apparently. I did not know that. And he is just amazing to watch when he plays the drums. They pick up the way they're able to just grab. They are able to play, it seems, anything, is my point. Well, he gave this advice. The interviewer said to Questlove, what advice do you have? You're so creative and you're so amazing to watch and you inspire creativity. What's your advice to people who, like, let's say, want to explore their creative side, but they're older and further along in life? And he said something that really irked me. He said, basically, he said, forget about it. Unless you need to start young, you have to be young. And if you want to pursue a creative career, you've got to be young, and then you've got to throw everything into it. You can't, you're going to be hit upside the head continuously, and you have to start young, is basically what he said. And that made me mad at Questlove, because basically that's the whole culture in music, is young people that have sacrificed everything. That's the only music you hear on the radio, are these people that have signed away their lives. There's so many times pop stars meet a horrible end. Witness Avicii recently. And it's just, I hate that. I hate the way the industry, the entertainment industry, just churns out. And it's a dream for many people. And they want to be creative. And I used to love the fact that there was social media and YouTube, and people could throw up on you. Not throw up, but, well, maybe there's a bit of that on YouTube. But there's, you could come up with something creative, put it on YouTube, and be discovered by the masses all over the world. And now I just hate that about Questlove. Other than that, he's great and he's creative. But for a creative guy to dissuade you from being creative, I don't know. But I had that early in my career in radio. I remember this guy coming up to me, a DJ, and saying, you really shouldn't be in radio. You should get out.
It's time to stop, okay?
And I was, I can't stop. We just can't stop, to quote the Miley. And that's about it. Did we want to hit anything else today? I can't think of anything.
Jeez. Oh, someone's gonna get fired.
There was that's crazy. 10 were injured at a Jewish celebration after a bonfire erupted into a fireball in London. We'll hit that last story there and tell you that 10 people were injured after the bonfire lit for a celebration for a Jewish holiday in North London exploded into a fireball. It's called a Lag BaOmer in Stamford Hill. As we go outside of Café Anyway, we're bringing Mike's Daily Podcast, somewhere in Podcaster Valley. And the podcast picture has to do with the Contemporary Jewish Museum in San Francisco. It is next to a place called Jesse Square and practically across the street from Yerba Buena Gardens. and also very close to the Powell Street BART station on Market, and also next to that big old mall. What do they call that mall? I forget. Something Mall. That's what it is. It's the something mall. It's the... Oh, they don't even have it on Google Maps, the name of the mall. Okay. Well, there's... Alright, anyway, the point is... I can't think of the stupid mall. I can't... Who cares about malls? That's something I was talking with LLC about. Malls are just basically playgrounds for teenagers now. That's the only place they have to go. And they're closing up left and right. But the Contemporary Jewish Museum is fascinating. Very artsy, modern, artistically built. It's built kind of in a big cube. Imagine a huge cube that sat on one of its corners is how it looks. Like a big, almost jewel-esque building. And this is one of the rooms, which the walls are all slanted, so you can't really hang anything. But they painted the walls white, and it allows you to put in the space a big red carpet and some cool little chairs, and I thought this was an interesting sight. And I went to the museum 6 years ago and took this picture, so that's what that is from in San Francisco. So see that at mikesdailypodcast.com. Ariel is about to tell you everything else about this show, but do go to mikesdailypodcast.com and check out all the past shows and past podcast pictures, and you can help out the show too through the PayPal link there at mikesdailypodcast.com. Next show, it'll be Shelley Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, and John Deere the Engineer. Enjoy your day.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!